doing something fun today. This is a video that's been on my request list for probably the longest, but there's just been so much exciting stuff happening lately with the new Stream Beats drop and, you know, Mixer getting shut down, all those things that I haven't quite found the time to do this one. OBS, the streaming software that nearly every streamer uses. Some of you guys use it really well, some of you guys not so much, and then some of you are just opening it up for the first time and are completely overwhelmed and have no idea what anything means. There are so many cool things in OBS that no matter which of those people you identify with in your skill set of OBS, there's always something new to learn. So let's go through the software. Let's just build a stream together. I'll show you the bare bone basics, like setting up multiple scenes, knowing which settings are important within the vast array of options in the settings tab that you've probably seen before. And I'll show you some of my favorite, more advanced tips and tricks that are actually really easy to do if you just know what to click on. Things like custom widgets and hotkeys to switch scenes automatically. Sounds good? Go. By the way, huge thank you to the sponsor of today's video, Owns.tv. They are your one-stop shop for all your stream aesthetic needs, whether it's overlays or alerts or panels or whatever. And one of my favorite things about it is that their overlays are modular. So for example, if you and all your friends want a similar overlay and you pick up this minimalist series overlay you're looking at right now, each of you can pick and choose different pieces of the overlay to use. So even though you'll all be using the exact same theme, none of you will have the exact same overlay. If you'd like to make the smart move like many from the community have done, feel free to use the link in the description down below. That link also supports the channel when you use it. And then on top of that, if you want 40% off, use code alpha at checkout. So the goal of this video is within the next 10 to 15 minutes or so, set up a live stream that looks comparable to the one that I use when I go live on Twitch, which by the way, I stream every Monday, Wednesday, Saturday. Link to that in the description down below. Come hang out. Sound like a plan? Awesome. So with OBS launched and completely bare bones, this is what it looks like. You know, it's weird. You got a bunch of weird boxes. You've got some stuff here with milliseconds and you got a bunch of little buttons here. In the beginning, all we're going to look at is this area, which is our preview. It shows us what our stream looks like. And these two areas right here. These are all your different scenes. So you can have a gameplay scene here that has your gameplay and your camera over in the corner. And then you can have an intermission scene here, which would be obviously between games when you can blow your camera up larger and interact with your chat a little bit more. And as you switch between them, the different sources are all the elements inside that scene. So essentially, these are folders with all the different things in it. Let's start by making our gameplay scene. The first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna rename this scene gameplay, so I know which one it is. So we got our scene. Let's add in a source. First thing we're going to do is we're going to grab our display. So right off the bat, I know this is a little bit inception-y because we're looking at our display, which also shows our display, which you get the point. And here we can see our entire screen and what it's capturing. So we're going to hit OK. And you can see anything I might bring up, whether it's my Stream Deck software or whatever, it's going to show up right here. Anyone that's watching my stream can see my screen now. Now, there are a couple different ways of capturing your screen. One more that you should be aware of. Another one, instead of using display capture, would be game capture. You can see if I add this in, if you have a game open, you'll be able to choose that specific game, or you can say choose any full screen application, which is, you know, usually you play your games in full screen. It'll grab whatever game is running, but it won't grab anything else. So this way, if you alt tab out of your game or minimize it to open up something in YouTube, your audience isn't going to be able to see it because it's only capturing your gameplay. However, the advantage to this is game capture is a lighter load on your PC. So if you're running a little bit more of a budget PC and trying to game and stream on it at the same time, it might be best to use game capture. You'll notice fewer dropped frames on your stream. So now you can see here, I've got two different sources in here, game capture, display capture. I'm going to get rid of game capture by hitting this little minus button right there. And we're going to stick with game capture because I got a pretty beefy PC over here. All right, let's add in the most important part. Let's add in your face. So whether you're using a webcam or a DSLR going into a capture card, those are all called video capture devices. So we're going to name this one webcam. You can see if I click on device, it'll show me every single video input source that the computer recognizes. So if I had another webcam plugged in here, it would show up right in here. But we're using my EOS R connected to my Camlink right now. And so we're going to go with Camlink 4K. And generally, device default is fine. But if you need to go to custom and do a custom resolution, that's an option for you. Let's shrink this down because it's our gameplay scene. We're gonna put it over here. I'm trying to like move this so you don't get that weird Inception-y stuff. I'm trying to cover it with the webcam. Maybe make it a little bit smaller. Yeah, maybe something like that. If I were gaming, I'd probably zoom in a little bit more during this scene. And there we go. We got our gameplay. We got our camera. Honestly, that is the bare bones that you can start a stream like that and people will enjoy it. Now, one thing to note is that the order of the sources is important. So you can see right now my webcam is on top of my display capture. And that's entirely because my webcam is on top of my display capture. If I drag it underneath it, look at that. I bring it back up, it goes back on top again. Make sure you're ordering your sources in the order of front to back. So next thing, let's grab an overlay. So we want to add another source. And first thing we're going to do is we're going to add a static overlay, a non-animated overlay. And it's just going to be an image. Call it camera border. So we're going to browse for an image file, which I've got one right on the desktop called white line camera border. And it's just a simple white rectangle, which, by the way, you do whatever you want. This is where you get to be creative. I would recommend not going overboard and keeping these things simple. This is actually pretty similar to what mine is currently set to. I'm going to turn off the display capture with this just so I can see the edges of the camera a little bit easier. I can use the arrow keys to move it one at a time. Cool. Let's turn this back on. Now we got a camera border, and we can do something pretty cool here. We can take the camera border and the webcam and we can group them. We're just going to call them cam. And now I can move, I can stretch this whole thing. It'll all work together. Now, if I wanted to add an animated border, I would go to add and I would go to media source, which is where you import videos. And we're going to call this animated overlay. So here's one that I got during a Fiverr video that I shot a while ago. A Fiverr artist animated this for me. You can see it's really subtle. It's simple, but it's kind of stylized. You got this little thing moving, you got this little thing flashing here. So if you wanted to add an animated overlay, that's where you'd find it. But I'm going to get rid of it by hitting this little minus button. There's one more thing to add to this scene to make it a fully featured gameplay scene, and that's going to be our alerts. So whether you use Streamlabs or Stream Elements, whenever you're done customizing your alerts, they pop you out a browser source, right? Or a URL. So for example, if I were to go to Stream Elements, which is the service I use. So here we can see I've got my sub alerts. This is what they look like. I'm going to copy the link from Stream Elements. I'm going to go back here. I'm going to add one more source. It's going to be a browser source. We're going to call it sub alerts. We're going to paste that URL right in there. We're going to make sure the width and height match what we have it set to in our alert software. So that alert in Stream Elements was a 1080p alert, and hit OK. And now if I emulate another subscriber, you can see on my scene here, let's put them just right. There we go. Got a little Charmander jumping up and doing an alert on my camera. And also we're going to throw this inside our camera scene. So that way, again, if we move this around, our alerts come with us. And this is now a solid gaming scene. You got your camera, you got your gameplay, you got a little bit of design added to it, and you've got your alerts for when people follow or sub or drop bits or whatever. From there, it's just kind of whatever you feel like adding. And browser sources can be really cool. The majority of fancy widgets that you put on your scene are done in a browser widget. So for example, I worked with this really talented widget designer named AC Pixel who made this now playing scene. So you can see if I play Neon Renegade from Streambeats, I can show my chat exactly what I'm playing. And all I have to do is launch this widget, take the URL, create a new browser source, which we will call now playing, and paste it in there. And he told me this is also 1920 by 1080. And there it is. You can move it around, resize it if we want a little now playing widget in the bottom left of the screen. Now it's right there. So there you go. You got a really cool now playing widget. You can hear the music playing in the background, and it took me like 15 seconds. So let's jump to the next thing. Let's set up a second scene here. We're gonna hit the plus button right here. We're gonna name it intermission, which is, in my opinion, the most important scene. A lot of people think your gameplay scene is the most important one because it's probably showing the most. But in reality, when you have your gameplay scene up, they're there to watch your gameplay and see you in the corner. And your intermission screen is when you're interacting with your audience. It's where it's about the actual engagement. And so I think this is the one that you should spend the most time on. Now you can see I can click back and forth. The intermission scene is empty because we haven't set anything up yet. But when you click on one, it changes scenes. Now let's do one thing first. The most important part of an intermission screen is the camera. So we're going to go back to video capture device, and you can see it shows you which ones you've already made. So instead of making a whole new source, you can add an existing source, and here's our webcam. And just like that, we have our webcam full screen for our intermission. And if I click back and forth, you can see how it works. One thing I'm not crazy about is this crossfade transition. I want to do something really cool. So let's move over here to scene transitions. And right now it's set to fade with 300 millisecond duration. And you can see if I change this to 1,000, see how slow that is? If I change it to 100, super fast. So we're gonna add a new transition in here, and you can see there are a handful of options. If you want to do a swipe one, you can swipe left, you can preview it here. I hate those. I think they're terrible. Very few people should use them. Let's add a stinger transition. Stinger transitions are the ones with custom animations. These can be fantastic tools for your stream. They're one of the elements that makes your stream look like you put a lot of effort into it. I would even say they're one of the few times that you can kind of go overboard and do something over the top and people will still enjoy it. Here's the Fiverr transition. I don't remember what it looked like. Oh, it was this one. That's right. I remember now. So you can see if I hit preview transition, it shows me two scenes, but you can see that it transitions from one scene to the next before the animation goes. So what you do is you can set a transition point in milliseconds. Let's set it at half a second. Oh, you can see the transition right before the doors close. 650 milliseconds. There we go. This isn't my favorite transition I've ever seen. It's way too long, but it works. One other thing that's important, I don't know why the audio fade style is set to this. I like using mine as a crossfade so that my audio, my voice is always there while the transition's happening. And now we've got two scenes in our transitions. And by the way, if you want a little trade secret about transitions here, you can have a different transition per scene. If I right click on gameplay scene here and go to transition override, I can actually set a different transition specifically for when I transition to the gameplay scene. So for example, if I want a different transition for each scene, I can go and I can make one individually with a plus button over here, name it properly, and then set it as the transition override. Okay, secret over. I can start talking at full volume again. I hope my microphone even picked me up when I said that. And the last basic function that you should be aware of here is the audio mixer, which is pretty straightforward. Most of the time when you add a source, like for example, the one it's picking up here is the cam link. It's actually hearing the microphone on the camera here. When you add a source that also has audio with it, it's going to add it to your audio mixer right here. But for example, display capture, capturing your display doesn't add your gameplay sound into it. And right now we wouldn't hear any audio from the computer at all. So no gameplay audio, no music, no anything. There are two ways to add audio sources manually to your stream. One of them is to add an audio capture device. So because our gameplay would be computer audio that's outputted to our headphones, we're going to grab an audio output capture. We'll call it gameplay audio. And I would pretty much grab like my headphones or whatever your audio is actually coming out of, which for me would be my Go XLR system audio. So you can see over here, if I pull up someone's stream now, like pull up my boy Wacky Jackie here. Now you can see it's picking up his audio. You can still hear my webcam right here. Yes. And also the gameplay audio is getting picked up. The other way to do audio is one we're going to get into in a second because it's inside the settings. And honestly, it's kind of a preferable way to do it. We'll do it in just a second. But an important trick about mixing audio with these faders that not a lot of people know. You'll notice that it goes from 0 at the top down to negative infinity. That's just how the decibel scale works. Now the decibel scale is a logarithmic scale. And the way it works is that 6 dB in either direction will either half or double the audio levels. So for example, if Wacky Jackie is just way too loud and I want to cut the volume down in half, I'll go down to -6. Now he'll be half the volume. If I want to cut him in half again, I'll go to -12. Let's say I had him at -3 and I want to cut him in half. I'll bring it down to -9, and that will be exactly half the volume from -3. But I don't want the webcam volume at all. I don't want to capture my camera microphone. That's going to sound terrible. So I'm going to mute it, and I'm going to click this little gear, and I'm going to hit hide. and now it just cleans it right off. So let's finish this off. Let's jump into the last area that you need to know at least the basics of, and that is the settings. There are a lot of settings to go through, and I know it's overwhelming, but honestly, like 90 to 95% of the settings I actually haven't changed. Most of them are just fine in the default settings. So let me go over the ones that you need to be aware of and how to change them. For the most part, you don't need to touch much in general. Let's go to stream. This is where you tell OBS where you're sending your stream to. So for example, if you're streaming on Twitch, you can either go into your Twitch settings and grab your stream key and type it in there, or you can hit connect account and actually sign into your Twitch account. Twitch is actually integrated into OBS, and that's the way I do it. I would recommend it, just like OBS does. Cool. Output. This is an important one. This is where you adjust the quality of your stream. This is also where you can fix a lot of problems if you're dropping frames. I would recommend going to advanced. It gives you a handful more options, and then only worry about the streaming tab here. That's all we're going to talk about. There are 3 things in here that you should be aware of first. One is the encoder. Are you going to use your CPU with X264, or are you going to use NVIDIA's NVENC encoder built into the GPU if you have an NVIDIA graphics card? Now, if you're running a dedicated streaming PC, X264 is going to look a tiny bit better, and you've got that CPU there anyway, you might as well use it. However, if you're on a single PC setup, rather than sharing your CPU between encoding and gameplay, you can set this dedicated encoder chip that's on your GPU, and you can get a lot smoother PC and better gameplay performance. The next one that's important is the bit rate. This is the file size that you are sending to Twitch. The larger the file size, the better it looks. 6,000 is the maximum Twitch recommends. It's a pretty safe place to go to. However, before I got transcoding options as a partner, I actually set this to 4,500 because this also explains the file size that your viewers are going to be watching in if you don't have transcoding option. And I found that bringing it down to 4,500 made it a little bit easier for my viewers with bad internet to be able to watch. And then you've got your encoder preset here. If you're on NVENC, max quality is great. If you're on X264, medium is what you are kind of aiming for. Now with X264, the faster it is, the worse it looks, but the easier it is on your PC. So if you're set to medium, but you're dropping encoder frames, switch it to fast. You'll lose a little bit of quality, but you're not going to be dropping frames. Anything above medium is kind of overkill. And at that point, you're adding a huge load to your PC with very negligible differences. Unless you have like a Threadripper PC, it's just not even worth it. Okay, audio. Now this is a better place for you to grab audio inputs. This little devices section is really the only section you need to worry about in here. Now you have 2 desktop inputs and 2 mic inputs. Your desktop sources are outputs, things that happen inside your computer that are sending out to speakers or sending out to your headphones. So for example, your gameplay will be in here, exactly what we were looking at before. For me, it would be system audio. Or if you have separate outputs and you're using voice meter or something like that, and you want to grab your music separately, that would be there also. And you can see when I hit apply, we've got 2 brand new sources in here, but we'll rename number 2 music. There we go. And the real advantage of this is now you can have an audio source that's not filling up your sources over here. So it just kind of keeps things a little bit cleaner. Your mic inputs, however, are external devices that are going into your computer. For example, a microphone. Or if you're streaming your console gameplay and you've got your console going into a capture card, your capture card would be another thing you could find in here. However, you're probably grabbing your capture card in sources, so you don't really need to add it in again in an audio device. Video is quick and simple, but it's important that you understand your base canvas is the resolution of this canvas here. So you can see if I change this to 720p, everything gets cropped in because I just made this canvas smaller and these were scaled to 1080p. Let me change it back. However, if you're dropping frames, you need to lighten the load on the PC a little bit. You can change your output, what OBS sends to Twitch, down to 720p, and even change your FPS to 30 FPS. Now your computer is only encoding a 720p 30 FPS stream. And while yes, you will lose a little bit of quality going down to 720p 30, a smooth 720p 30 stream is a much better viewing experience than a choppy 1080-60, dropping packets of 6 frames at a time. And really, of all the settings, those are the important ones that you should know when you're starting. Once you get the hang of OBS, feel free to explore other settings. It's cool to know what you have in your toolbox, but I mean, you can take these settings I mentioned and you can run with them for a couple of years. You're totally fine. There is one cool trick that I want to show you in the settings, and that's hotkeys. You saw earlier I was switching between scenes by clicking on this, but if you're in the middle of a stream, you don't want to be grabbing your mouse, finding the right scene. Some people have dozens of scenes. So once I go to hotkeys in the settings, I can go to my gameplay scene right here. And you can see there's an option for switch to scene. I'm going to set that as left brace. And then I'm going to go to my intermission scene. I'm going to set that one as the end brace. And now and let's go back. Voila, switch to scene hotkeys. If you don't have a Stream Deck, which obviously is a better alternative than that, this is a great way to easily switch between scenes right on your keyboard. So by the way, if any of you guys are beginners and you enjoyed this video, if you found this really helpful, please let me know in the comments down below. And if you want me to make another video that's about more advanced tips and tricks in OBS to help you kind of take your stream to the next level, let me know in the comments down below. Again, I do stream every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, so if you have some questions that maybe I missed, feel free to hit me up on there. But I hope this helped, and as always, happy streaming. You naked?
I didn't have any. Yeah, well, I'm putting on a shirt now.
Are you playing shitless?
Yeah, dude, full disclosure, I'm butt naked right now.
Oh, okay. Thank you for the
Now I have a shirt on. Now I have a shirt on, don't worry.
You're still butt naked though.